How many folks out there still have their first Yu-Gi-Oh card ever? How many people can even remember what their first card was? I can, and I'm going to talk a bit about the card in today's video. Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Parkside Merchant channel. For folks who are new to our channel, we basically cover a lot of vintage Yu-Gi-Oh and collectible related topics. So if you are new to the channel and you enjoy this kind of content, please feel free to drop a like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on all of our most recent uploads. For today's video, interestingly, I wanted to talk a bit about basically my first card ever. I think a lot of folks over the years forget what their first card was. Maybe it got destroyed, or you sold it, or you just don't even recall, right? Because you had so many cards back in the day when we were all kids. So in my particular case, not only do I remember what my first card was, I actually still have it by some, miraculous occurrence, right? I just never got rid of this stuff, and I still actually have the card that was my first item in the collection. So I want to spend some time in today's video sort of talking a bit about the history of this card, how I got it, why I still have it, and all that sort of good stuff. But before I do, maybe just a quick word here on today's giveaway for this video. So the giveaway is going to be another near mint first edition copy of Jigen Bakudan from Magic Ruler. This, I believe, is a short print from that set. Very fun card. And this one, again, is in pretty good shape. It's a short print. These are pretty hard finds these days, so it's a pretty fun giveaway. The only thing you have to do in order to enter the giveaway for this video is like the video, subscribe to our channel, and then tell me in the comments, do you remember what your first Yu-Gi-Oh card was? Do you still have the card? Talk a bit about your first card or your first items, first collectibles from Yu-Gi-Oh in the comment, and that's all you have to do. And then we will hopefully announce the winner here, on the video comments. Probably in about a week or so, we'll announce the winner down in the comments. So that's the giveaway content. I think I wanted to move on maybe just to talk a bit about these cards here. So the first item, as I recall, that entered my collection was this copy of the Feral Imp. Now, how do I know this was my first card, you may ask? There's a couple of things that stand out. First, I do recall this card in particular being in my backpack when somebody gave it to me, basically on the playground. So I know that it was this card. I know it was a Feral Imp copy that was the first, and I know that it was in really rough shape when I got it. And you can see here from this image, this card is in basically catastrophic condition, folks. I mean, get a load of that edge wear. Look at all these creases and bends. Look at that. I mean, look at how played and worn this card is. And then on the back, you can see as well. I mean, this card, honestly, may have even been, people joke about stuff that's been through the wash and so forth. I think this one may have actually been through the wash. Or it may have been in a garment, like in my pant, like in a pocket, and then went through the wash in the pocket, is possibly what happened to this card. And it may have happened several times, frankly, by the looks of it. So the reasons that I know it's authentic and that it is the original is this was a piece of trash when it was given to me in 2002. This came out of the Starter Deck Yu-Gi Unlimited Edition from like one of the big kids on the playground who didn't want it anymore. I didn't have any Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I must have asked nicely, could I have a Yu-Gi-Oh card of yours that you don't want anymore so that I could see it? And this person must have been very charitable and very kind, because they did indeed give it to me. And I remember putting it in my backpack and then taking it home. You couldn't do anything with it. Like I couldn't duel with just one card, but it was fun to have like one card for a while when it was something new, right? It's like, you think about how people got started in all this. For some folks, maybe it was a trip to the toy store where they just decided to purchase something, right? And then after that point, they were dueling or whatever very regularly. I think for a lot of other people, like myself, we got exposed to Yu-Gi-Oh through other friends and through other people at school, and it wasn't necessarily a first purchase that got us into the hobby, but it was somebody that just gave us their junk, their trash. I mean, this was a piece of trash, folks. Like, this was probably headed to the dumpster or the garbage bin in order for it looked honestly this bad, I think, when I got it, because I take very good care of my cards, and none of my other cards look like this except this guy here, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's partly how I know that it's the original and the authentic first card that I had, because it was in awful condition when I first received it. So for somebody that takes good care of my cards, and having this as the only one in my huge collection that looked like this, that's how I kind of knew this wasn't one of mine. This was something that I got from somebody in the very early days. And I distinctly recall putting this in my backpack, like at the bottom of the backpack. And it probably got even a little bit more wrinkled in there because it was my first card or whatever. But in any case, it's interesting, right? Because this is not the good Feral Imp from like Metal Raiders. It's not first edition. It's also just like an awful shape. But it was the first card, right? And I believe I did play with it originally in my deck when I first got when I actually went out into the real world and purchased like a real pack or two or a starter deck to actually use to play. So that's kind of how I know it's the original. I would never grade this. I would never send it to PSA just because it would get a terrible grade, and I don't really need to do that because I know what it is. But it's cool, right? I still have that piece of history. I still have the first one that I ever had. This thing here, let me just pull that up here. I can't remember if I got this at the same time as the Feral Imp, or if I got it like a week later or a couple days later. It's possible I asked the guy for like another card of his, and this is what I got. I don't remember exactly. But I do remember these being very closely familiar in my mind as like the OG card. So I think I got this one like probably either at the same time, and I just liked it less than the Feral Imp, or I got it, a couple days later, because this is also in catastrophic shape. The condition is really, really bad, as you can see. None of my other cards look like this at all. I mean, even the stuff I played a lot never got quite this bad in terms of condition. So this is another one that I know is like really OG. That was somebody's trash in 2002, folks. Think about that for a second. These cards were somebody's junk in 2002, right? It's just amazing to me, right? It's like, that's just crazy. So yeah, these were kind of the first couple of OG cards. I do remember having them in the deck, my first deck when I was playing, and first kind of getting familiar with the game. And yeah, it's just kind of a fun little pair of cards that hold a special place in my collection. The other thing I did want to kind of talk a bit about, I think, in this video is just sort of kind of my history of getting started, and just some of my opinion about what it was like playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in 2002. So what was unusual is there was kind of this sort of almost like a grace period, if you will, at my school, where people were allowed to play this stuff. They were allowed to trade cards on the playground and all that stuff. We had a good run, probably of about 5 or 6 months, I would guess, before the administration started picking up on what kids were doing and how popular it was getting, before they made a decision to ban Yu-Gi-Oh! At my school, right? Which I think they did for most schools in the US. There were like limits, or there were bans, or there were some kind of administration restrictions imposed on having cards. And it was so bad at my school that if you were caught with Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, like on school grounds at all, you got like detention, right? They'd give you a write-up and they would call home and all that scary stuff as a kid. So it got scary, right? It became sort of like an underground, off the books, like just secretive activity that people got involved in. And was there still wheeling and dealing and trading and all that stuff on the playground even after it was banned? Absolutely. And that's what made it more fun, to be honest, as kids. I think some of those policies about like banning Yu-Gi-Oh! And giving detention for people, it actually made it even more of a Wild West and made it even more scary for the really little kids that were playing against big kids who would, steal their cards or like cut him a bad deal, like a dirty trade or whatever. And it just created a lot of just negative behavior among players and people on the school grounds that I think would have been less likely if it had been sort of more open and public, and there wasn't as much like pressure and secretive nature of all the dealings and things going on. Kind of like with Prohibition, right? It was sort of how Prohibition in the US resulted in a lot of crime and a lot of like dangerous activity, a lot of excess, all sorts of things. You know, you think about the incentives that it created by banning it, a lot of negative consequences, honestly. It turned some kids into other stuff, you know, like bad stuff, right? If they couldn't play Yu-Gi-Oh or do all these other hobbies and activities, they started getting into all the bad stuff that kids sometimes get into, right? Drinking and all those other things. So just, you know, it's worth thinking about in hindsight, like, do policies like that have the intended effect of reducing trades and reducing play and distractions and all those things? Sometimes has the opposite effect, and it sometimes has the opposite effect with a high degree of force and with negative consequence. So I'm not a school administrator, right? I'm not on school boards and stuff. I don't really have any skin in the game. I don't really understand how this stuff works, but I can tell you from firsthand experience that getting these cards and being able to play this stuff when it was illegal and it was banned made it even more like dramatic and interesting for people on the playground, and made some of the behaviors of the big kids just like really bad, right? Relative to what they probably would be doing if it was just a normal course of business, just a normal activity on the playground, right? So that's all, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed getting a chance to see some of the first cards that entered my collection. Feel free to drop a like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate your time as always. Once again, this is the Parkside Merchant. Thanks for watching.